The Galactic Academy's xenobiology classroom fell into stunned silence as Liana Martinez stepped through the reinforced doorway, two massive tiger cubs draped across her shoulders like living stoles. Their amber eyes surveyed the room with lazy curiosity while their rumbling purrs vibrated through the air, causing several of the more sensitive species to retreat behind their protective barriers. Professor Kethvar, a distinguished Zenthari with iridescent scales that now flickered nervously, between green and yellow, stared at the human exchange student. His forearms gestured frantically as he processed what he was witnessing. "Ms. Martinez," he began, his voice carrying the typical clicking undertones of his species. "When I assigned each student to bring a predator from their homeworld for our comparative study, I expected, well, perhaps a holographic projection or a small specimen in a containment unit." Liana grinned, her white teeth gleaming in a way that made half the class instinctively step back. She gently lifted one of the cubs, easily weighing over 100 pounds, and cradled it like an oversized house cat. The creature responded by nuzzling her neck affectionately. "These are Sasha and Boris," she announced cheerfully. "They're Siberian tigers, about 6 months old. Don't worry, they're well-fed and socialized." Raza, her human companion and fellow exchange student, entered behind her carrying what appeared to be several containers of meat and a bag of toys. His dark eyes sparkled with amusement as he watched their classmates' reactions. Unlike many of the other species present, humans had learned to find humor in the galaxy's persistent underestimation of their kind. 6 months, squeaked Piptel, a diminutive corvan whose entire body was no larger than one of the cub's paws. "How large do they grow?" "Oh, these little guys will eventually reach about 10 feet long and weigh around 600 pounds, Liana replied casually, scratching behind Boris's ears. The cub's purr intensified, a sound that registered on seismic equipment 3 floors down. The classroom erupted in chaos. Several species immediately activated their emergency beacon systems, while others began calculating escape routes. The Vorthak delegate, known throughout the galaxy as one of the most feared warrior races, actually fainted. Professor Kethvar's scales had now shifted to a deep red, a color his species reserved for imminent death scenarios. "Ms. Martinez, you cannot simply... These are apex predators. How do you control them?" Liana looked genuinely confused. "Control them? I don't control them. We're friends." She set Sasha down, and the massive cub immediately began play-fighting with Boris, their movements graceful despite their size. Tigers are incredibly intelligent and emotional creatures. If you treat them with respect and understanding, they respond in kind. Raza stepped forward, his voice calm and educational. "What I think the professor is struggling with is the concept of interspecies bonding without dominance hierarchies. On Earth, humans have formed partnerships with thousands of different species, many of them predators." "Partnerships?" The question came from Zexhai, an insectoid Crix whose compound eyes glittered with academic curiosity despite her obvious fear. "You mean you've domesticated them?" "Not exactly," Liana said, now sitting cross-legged on the floor as both cubs climbed over her like a living jungle gym. "Domestication implies we've changed them to suit us. With big cats like these, it's more about mutual respect and understanding. We learn their language, they learn ours." She demonstrated by making a series of chuffs and low vocalizations. Both tigers immediately responded, their body language shifting to one of attention and affection. Sasha butted her massive head against Liana's shoulder, while Boris flopped onto his back, exposing his belly in a display of absolute trust. "Impossible," breathed Professor Kethvar. "Our xenobiological studies indicate that predator species maintain strict hierarchical structures. For a smaller, weaker creature to command the loyalty of an apex predator without establishing dominance." "Who says we're weaker?" Raza interjected quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Liana stood up, her movements fluid and confident, both cubs flanking her like furry bodyguards. For the first time, the assembled aliens began to truly observe the humans before them. Liana's eyes held the same predatory focus as the tigers beside her. Her movements displayed the same controlled grace, the same awareness of her surroundings. When she smiled, it wasn't the harmless expression of a prey species. It was the confident bearing of something that had never known the fear of being hunted. On Earth, she began, her voice taking on the cadence of a teacher, humans are persistence hunters. We don't rely on speed or strength alone. We use intelligence, cooperation, and most importantly, empathy. We don't just kill our prey, we understand it. We learn its patterns, its fears, its desires. Raza nodded, adding, the same skills that made us effective hunters also made us capable of forming bonds with other predators. We understand what drives them because in many ways, we're the same. But you're so small, protested Yithtal, a crystalline being whose species had evolved from herd creatures. Liana laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both warm and slightly terrifying. Size isn't everything. Humans have brought down mammoths with nothing but pointed sticks and teamwork. We've sailed across vast oceans in wooden boats. We've tamed fire, split the atom, and touched the stars. As if sensing the shift in mood, both tiger cubs moved closer to their human companion, their massive forms creating an unmistakable barrier between Liana and the rest of the class. The remarkable thing about humans, Professor Kethvar said, slowly, his scales gradually shifting back toward their normal blue-green, isn't that they've bonded with predators. It's that the predators have chosen to bond with them. Sasha chose that moment to knock Liana over with an enthusiastic head bump, pinning her to the ground with 200 pounds of playful tiger. Rather than struggling, Liana simply laughed and began wrestling with both cubs, their game turning the classroom floor into a battleground of affection and controlled violence. The other students watched in fascination as this small human, this supposedly fragile creature, held her own against two of the most dangerous predators in known space, not through dominance or technology, but through simple, genuine friendship. As the class period ended and Liana gathered her unusual companions, Professor Kethvar made a note in his digital pad. Humans, apex predator, classification, unknown. Further study required. Raza paused at the doorway looking back at their stunned classmates. Just wait until next week's assignment on domestic companions, he said with a grin. Liana's bringing her dog. The thought of what humans might consider a domestic companion after seeing their idea of manageable predators sent several species into immediate panic. But as they watched the two tigers follow their human friend down the corridor with obvious devotion, one thing became crystal clear. In a galaxy full of powerful species, perhaps none were more formidable than the ones who could turn their greatest threats into their most loyal friends.